Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just giving a few minutes to for everybody to log in.
And as new people come on, feel free to share where you're from. If you're from Jersey like us, you can share what town. Could play Jersey geography. Franklin Township.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
We have two Sarahs on today. We have one Sarah from Florida and one Sarah from Franklin Township. Hi, Caitlin. From New Jersey as well.
And we're just going to give a couple more minutes for people to come on. I see the people coming in one by one. So after you come in, please feel free to share where you're from. If you're in New Jersey, share what town. And we'd love to see where everyone's coming from and connecting all together here.
Hi, Miss Farwa. It's Danielle Diaz from White House Station, New Jersey.
Hi,
I'm
Danielle.
Leo's mom. Hi.
Welcome. We're so excited everybody's here today, especially this late in the evening.
Yes.
I think we'll give one more minute, Joni.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Hi, Fancy from Bridgewater. And we have Kira from Chicago. So let's get started, and then as people come in, I'll admit them to our meeting.
Perfect.
From Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Hi, Ambreen. She has a 6-year-old who has a speech problem due to autism. We're going to get into that. Hi, Deepa from North Brunswick. I'm so excited everybody's here. What a wonderful community we're creating.
Okay, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. What a glorious day. Hello from the other side. Wait, everything I said made sense, but it kind of didn't. What are you talking about, Ms. Farwa? Well, many of our Gestalt language processors speak this way, and we're going to talk about the many different ways we learn language and process language. And I'm really excited that you all are here. My name is Farwa Hussain. I'm a speech language pathologist, and we have Dr. Joni joining us as well, and we're going to get into our bios.
Go ahead, Farwa, introduce yourself.
Well, like I said, my name is Farwa Hussain. I'm a speech language pathologist and owner of One-on-One Speech Therapy located in Raritan, New Jersey. I specialize in Gestalt language processing and have been a speech language pathologist about 13 years. I would say graduated from Columbia University, and I serve as president of Morris County Speech and Hearing Association. It's a nonprofit organization that provides CUs and clinical education to speech language pathologists throughout New Jersey. It's such a great honor that I was able to present at American Speech and Hearing Association last year's national convention on Gestalt language processing with Marge Blanc and colleagues. The only financial disclosure I have is that I am an affiliate of Meaningful Speech. Dr.
And
Joni?
my name's Dr. Joni Redlick. I have been a pediatric physical therapist for 23 years now. And I own Kid PT. We are a physical therapy and occupational therapy practice in Raritan. And we also have the honor of housing Farwa's practice as well, which is how we began collaborating and are here to be able to share a lot of the things we've learned with you. So I am also the author of a book called Turn Stumbling Blocks into Building Blocks. Oh, thank you, Farwa. And it's really about how movement's connected to absolutely everything. And how to take that concept and put it into action as well. And I have had also the honor of mentoring a lot of other therapists that work in my practice and also out throughout the country, and have been able to really share my kind of paradigm and systems and process with therapists from around the world through my book. So that's been really exciting. And we're happy to be able to talk to you all tonight.
Well, what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about how neurodivergent children may process and use language, sensory input, and movement differently. And we're going to be able to identify two different types of learning that is natural language learning styles, and they will be analytic language processing and gestalt language processing. We want you to be able to take away how our body, access to our body helps our communication, and home strategies to help your children. Now, learning looks different for all children. And let's embrace that, and let's embrace each child's individual strengths and support them in their communication and learning.
I'm sure you've seen pictures like this before. So what do you see? Go ahead, throw it in the chat. What do you see? Everyone kind of sees different things. I think the first thing I saw when I first saw this picture was two people looking at each other. Other people may see something different. Let's see. Oh, we got a vase, two people talking. Yes, even when we see different things, we can also interpret it different ways too. So what we're talking about is that with our kids, we can look at them in different ways. So very often when a kid is having any kind of struggle, you go to a doctor, you go to a therapist, and what so often happens is they make a list of all the things the child can't do. So you have this long list of the things they can't do, and that often then leads to therapy on working on those things, taking all the things that are hard and let's practice them and let's try to make them better. We like to look at this whole paradigm shift where instead of looking at all the things that are hard, let's look at all the things that are strengths for the child, all the things that are wonderful about them. What are their interests? And what are the things that are those things we can build on, those windows of opportunity that are things we can build on to help them develop new skills? So it's really a paradigm shift. It's a different way of thinking. And when you come from a different way of thinking, it can change the whole therapeutic process and bring a lot more also joy and fun and natural change as part of it. So we invite you to join us on this kind of paradigm shift of not looking at just all of the I can'ts, but all the I cans, and then how do we build off of those things? check your assumptions at the door. I love this, assumptions everywhere. There are a lot of assumptions that often people bring to the table when we're working with kids who are neurodivergent. So we make assumptions based on how a child talks or if a child talks, and we sometimes make assumptions and jump to conclusions. So we just want to always be, and this is myself included, always remind myself, always check, am I making an assumption? And let's stop that. And what do I do instead? So the do's of checking your assumptions is assume competence. We want to, for both understanding and for comprehension, we want to assume the child is understanding everything we're saying to them and taking in so much in their world. Assume they want to have a relationship with you or the people around them. And we want to just assume all of those positive things. Our don'ts is we don't want to assume that a negative facial expression is how the child is feeling. I was telling Farah the story about a young man I work with that I thought he just was having the worst day ever. And then he told me he was having the best day and he was so happy. And I was making that assumption based on his facial expression, and it was not matching how he was feeling. So I now remind myself, do not assume based on the facial expression. Also, don't assume that behavior equals intention. So we're going to talk a little bit later, a little bit more about the why, but we don't want to assume because a child's doing something that they're doing it because they're just being uncooperative or they don't want to. There are so many reasons that may be leading to what you're observing. And then don't assume that the child is experiencing the world the way you are. A lot of our neurodivergent kids are literally experiencing the world completely different than you or I. And we have to work really hard. We have to observe, we have to listen, and really try to put ourselves in their shoes and just understand that their sensory world is nothing like ours. And it's kind of like, you know, if you and I are sitting in a room and I have my glasses on and we're looking at each other and we're talking, and then I take them off and, you know, we try to continue the conversation, I'm going to be a little distracted because I am now taking in the world very differently than I am typically. So we just want to always remind ourselves to kind of just check our assumptions and then go from there. So that's always our starting point that we want to come from.
Now it's your turn. Your turn. Sweet.
Did you know that there are two ways to learn language naturally? They are called analytic language learning and gestalt language learning. Now, both are natural ways, and it doesn't matter your neurotype. It could be a neurotypical child, it could be an adult, it could be a neurodivergent child, an autistic child that learns language. They can be both analytic and gestalt. And I'm going to show you a video of my son and my niece. My son is an analytic learner. They're both close to the same age, a few months apart, and my niece is a gestalt language processor.
Now it's your turn. Your turn. Sweet. Now it's your turn. Your turn. Sweet.
I sent this video to my sister and she's like, "What are you showing me?" And I said, "How beautiful is this video? Look at my son who is using words and putting together single words to say, now it's your turn. And look at my niece who's matching the tunes of the environment, saying, ooh, and you don't really know what she's saying, but you know she's trying to communicate something. That's a gestalt language processor. So we're going to get into what both of those mean, but I just thought it was so beautiful. And it's very, children tend to unbundle their language really fast when they're a gestalt language processor, neurotypical or autistic children. We tend to catch them later, and that in the stage where they're having delayed echolalia. But when it comes to natural language development, it happens very, very quickly. So catching a video like this is pretty phenomenal. Okay, So what is analytic language learning? That's what we're traditionally taught. A child learns one word and builds on it to make a phrase. So mama eats pizza. Mama eat pizza. And each word is a single unit. Traditionally, we're taught that children learn one word, two words, phrases, and build on it.
What are we gonna do?
That's a Gestalt language processor. What is a Gestalt language processor? Well, that's the bottom down approach, which is they come in learning a full chunk. And they match the tunes of our environment. And what they do, and what ASHA says, the American Speech and Hearing Association, defines it as a style of language development with multi-word Gestalt forms. Now, I want to demystify Gestalt language processing. Because this is a term that's now being used so much, people are getting scared. Parents are calling me crying because they're being diagnosed as a Gestalt language processor. There's no need to diagnose a child with this because it's a natural way to acquire language, which they just learn differently in a natural way. There's two different ways of learning. So for Gestalt language processors, they learn in chunks and they match the tunes of our environment. All these chunks that they're learning are due to their rich intonation. They pick up the sounds of our environment. And Gestalt, scripting, delayed echolalia all mean the same thing. They've heard something, they're borrowing language, they're holding it in, and they need to go through developmental steps to unbundle that to get to their single word. Natural way, it's all meaningful. Now, when I say they're picking up the tunes of our environment, what does that mean? Let me show you my friend who is an adult. And he's picking up the tune of what I'm seeing.
What are we gonna do?
So I said, what are we gonna do? And instead of him repeating it, he is. It's meaningful. He's saying, he's matching the tunes of what I am saying. So Gestalt language processing is just learning in chunks. It's a developmental process, and we're gonna get into the stages.
It's monkey. Monkey. It's a no. No. Oh, it's an octopus. Octopus. It's like Joe, it's my question. Question. It's my wing. Wing.
That's one long Gestalt. It's one big chunk.
Yeah, the timer machine digs from underground. Get away, dude! Okay. What? Yellow one. Yellow one. Red ball. Naughty ostrich. Who was that?
Now, because our Gestalt language processors are learning from their environment, these can be learned in long chunks, where it could be a full movie show, a TV script. It could be a short single word like blue, green, yellow. And this is things that have been taught to the child. It could be intonationally rich sounds of the environment instead of how you doing, what are you doing? Where it sounds it, or if you're saying, I love you, they'll say, I love you. So they're matching those tunes. Traditionally, we think people tend to say Gestalt language processing and echolalia hand in hand, but I'm going to get into what echolalia is. So let's simplify. There's a lot of terms that are being thrown around. Gestalt, script, delayed echolalia. What does it mean? They all mean the same thing. Gestalt script delayed echolalia is borrowed words from our environment. A child holds it and then they reiterate it or tell it back at a different time. So it could be a movie script. It could be something that they've heard. It could be from text that they're reading. And an example of this could be child really loves YouTube nursery rhymes. So they'll say, rain, rain, go away to communicate. All of it is meaningful. And those words they mean the same thing. Mean delayed echolalia, something that they've heard and they're going to hold it and say it at different time. Now, echolalia has there's two different types of echolalia, immediate versus delayed. Immediate echolalia, many autistic children tend to do this, but many children acquiring language do this. So if I'm saying, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? They repeat it right back immediately. So it's something that they've heard and they're going to say it right back. There's a lot of functions for it. They're processing language, they're using it as a turn taking, and they're using it to buy time, they're using it to process language, and it's meaningful. The second it becomes held and they say it at a later time, it could be a couple minutes, couple days, or a couple hours later, it becomes delayed echolalia. When a child is using delayed echolalia, script gestalt, same thing, then we are moving through the developmental stages of gestalt language processing. Analytic language processing is when a child learns single words and they build on that. That is traditionally what everybody is taught language is. NLA means natural language acquisition. That is the framework used to describe gestalt language processing and it says that gestalt language processing follows developmental stages. And if anybody ever has any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat as they come along. We'd love to answer them as they come along.
Okay.
So this friend came to me and the parents wanted an articulation evaluation, a speech sound evaluation when they came in. They're saying her sounds don't sound right. And I was like, well, have you heard of Gestalt language processing? And mom started crying. She said, what's wrong with my daughter? Oh no. So I want to take that away I want to take that feeling of fear away from parents and away from practitioners, because this is a new term that we are not taught in graduate school. And we learn as we gain experience working with many different children and language learners. So Gestalt language processing is natural, and the stages of Gestalt language processing follow developmental norms. Any child at any age can be a Gestalt language processor. Children tend to unbundle their language and get to and be able to produce longer strings of sentences much younger and faster by age 3. So at that point, they look very close to their analytic peers, so it's never caught. Children that tend to be stuck in this scripting and delayed echolalia phase is many of our autistic children. And that's why a lot of well-meaning practitioners will say, oh, your child is a Gestalt language processor. There's nothing wrong with it. It's identifying your child as a Gestalt language processor is empowering, because now you know, hey, there's nothing wrong with how they're learning differently, and it follows developmental norms, and we can get them to unbundle the language and become a better communicator. So I want to go through and discuss the stages really quickly. So natural language acquisition is a framework by Marge Blanc, who did extensive research from previous research from Barry Prasad and Ann Peters, and built on that and took the original 4 stages and added on 2 more. The first stage is scripting, and the next is when they take words and phrases that they previously learned and use it in a meaningful way. Stage 2 is when they use those words and mix and match them. Stage 3 is referential single words. This is very similar to our analytic learners that have single words and are able to put those single words together. Stage 4 is all about experimental grammar. Children will be starting to formulate their own sentences, and 5 and 6 is complex sentences. They freed up their language and unbundled it, and they're making their own sentences. So I want to give you an example. So this is an example of one of my friends who's down in the chat right now. You saw the video. So Dr. Jonah, do you mind playing that video one more time?
Okay.
So we know that she's saying something meaningful because she's very animated and we're looking at her body language, and she has a lot of wonderful things to say. We don't want to extinguish that. Taking a gestalt language holistic approach, and what we want to do is give them lots of scripts, lots more language so they can unbundle it. For our analytic learners, we tend to say a lot of single words to our kids, but for our gestalt language processors, we need to give them longer words. So when we gave her lots of phrases, then she really started loving, it was aligning with her potty training. So mom was reading Daniel Tiger's story. So this was one of her favorite gestalt.
Go potty, stop and go right away.
So anytime she had to go potty, she would say, when you gotta
go potty,
stop and go right away. She would sing it and match the tunes of it. When you gotta go potty, stop and go right away. And then at stage 2, her language started to unbundle. So she was able to mix and match that and say, I gotta go potty. Farwa, I gonna go poop. And then stage 3 is a magic stage because they're unbundling that language and those bigger scripts that they have, and they're saying, hey, there's a single word and I can use that single word to make new words. So it was poop. So poop meant I gotta go potty. Poop. I think I gotta go poop. Mommy, poop. Poop. I just went to the bathroom. So these are single words that our analytic peers would say the same way if they were learning how to potty train and had single words, poop. So, and then at stage 4, she was, I done. Now she's starting to make her own sentences and use up the freed words. And Farwa, I go poop. And this is our experimental grammar stage. So it sounds like bad grammar, but it's not bad grammar at all. It's experimental. They're working through it. And then big one. Stage 5 and 6 is complex language and complex grammar. Okay. So some home strategies I want you guys. Lavi had a question. Can the language show all the stages at the same time at the same age? Yes. Do we correct grammar if it's out of order? No. So Lavi, wonderful question. You know what? Children can show language in every single stage. What we want to support is the stage that they're mostly in, 50% of the time. That being said, they need to have good foundational skills. So they need to have a good foundation of stage 1, which means they need lots of inventory of scripts. So that way they can move on to stage 2 and mix and match it. So rain, rain, go away. And they'll have that script. Then at stage 2, it could be rain, go away. Stage 3, they can use it as go. Now, when a child is in stage 4, they are very, at this point, we can do WH questions, ask them questions. We're not working on grammar at this stage yet. We're going to start explicitly working on grammar in stage 5 and 6. We can start modeling at stage 4 because we want to build confidence more than anything. The foundation of through all these stages is we have to form a sense of trust and form a connection with our child. Many times what happens is that during these stages, people, well-meaning professionals, parents want to extinguish it. Oh, that doesn't sound right. Stop. Oh, we can't say rain, rain, go away. That doesn't mean anything. Stop. And it starts to go underground. And then you're not able to, then the child suppresses it and it ends up being taught language and they can't unbundle it. So yes, you can show many different stages at once, and the child will naturally go through that. They need to have a good, strong foundation to move them through the stages, and they have to be 50% in the stage. And we're not correcting grammar in the first 3 stages, not even concerned at all with it. Stage 4, 5, 6 is initial grammar. Now, things that we can do at home. Like our analytic peers that we give many different words to. So example, if you see a little child, you're so used to saying car, red, big, wow, look at that. Zebra, you go to the zoo, they'll have a bunch of different words and they can put them together. If you do the same thing with the Gestalt language processor, they're left with a bunch of words that they don't know what to do and how to mix and match. So we have to give them longer phrases, and we have to give them in short and long phrases so that way they can take it and mix and match it and move them through their stages to get to that single word where they can start forming their own. But you can't do that without connection and trust. The child needs to feel safe with you, that it's okay, and you see everything as meaningful. So if a child is saying, if you gotta go potty, go right away, that doesn't literally mean they're singing the song every single time. We got to go and look at the meaning behind it. So one of my friends says, sings the entire alphabet song, X, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Now I know my ABC. Next time, won't you sing with me? What he's trying to say is, next time, won't you sing with me? Let's play together. So we're going to take that, we're going to take the let's play together meaningfully, because the tunes that they've picked up in their environment is based on a connection that they've had during that moment. And we want to take Gestalt, not literally, but we're going to look at the meaning behind it. We're going to look at the child's regulation. We're going to get into regulation in a second. We are not asking any questions. What is this? What is that? Because that ends up being a lot of taught single words and taught language. What our goal is for a child to unbundle their language, to generalize their language in a very natural way. Instead of asking questions, what is this? We use declarative sentences. Oh, look, that's fun. That's the big elephant. And then we are not taking any of these scripts literally. We're going to look at the meaning behind it, and then we're going to laugh and play and have fun. Form a connection, because it's a lot of fun. Our children are so magical and so fun, and they're full of so much love. If we come down at their level, we know how magnificent and smart they are. We're always going to assume competence on the receptive language scales. They are brilliant. We're going to honor all play. We're going to acknowledge all their gestalts. It could be a head nod. If you don't understand what they're saying, yeah, you'll see if you didn't hear in the videos that sometimes I don't know what they're saying and I'll go, and then Gestalt language development is not based on any age norm. It's not like, oh, at 3, your child should be at this stage. It's developmental, and they need to go through it themselves through each stage. Children tend to go faster through each stage when they get support and they have a trusted communication partner. You just need one person to believe in you, and then you're gonna fly.
There's a comment on here, Farwa. Could this be an example? I say to my son, oh, look, it's raining. He goes and says from a script, I am so sick of this rain.
Yeah, so what a beautiful example of a delayed echolalia or a script. And that is a beautiful example of a child communicating. So what are they trying to say when they're saying it's raining? And it's so beautiful that they're recalling it at the same time you're speaking about rain. So it may be that they're doing it because, hey, mom, yeah, it's raining. So doing the detective work is very important. Figuring out where that script came from and what was happening in that video. And you want to just acknowledge that, like, yeah, and give them a phrase that you think that they're meaning. It is raining. I love it. Or, oh, it's so wet. And then there's another question.
Yeah, that kind of fits right into the next question. As an SLP, where do I start with picking what scripts to focus on in sessions?
What a wonderful question. So we want to individualize scripts to the child, to their language, to their culture, to their background, to their family lifestyle. So picking a script for that is going to be individualized. There's not a word bank that we can go to. But what we do need to do is make sure that a child has a full range of phrases for different communicative intents. So for joy, I love that. That's so fun. For refusal, I don't like that. That's gross. These are just something I'm throwing out there, but if the family uses a different phrase, if the child uses something different, you can always use something different. Transition, what's next? I'm all done. Body autonomy, that hurts. I don't like it. Sensory experiences, I'm jumping, it's slimy, it's sticky. We definitely want to start building in commenting. So that's a big one. It's green, that's huge. Having commenting is very important because this is precursory to our being able to tell stories, precursory to grammar. So for children that don't get that commenting piece, they tend to go forward in their stages, but then they can't stop. And then we have to work back. So I always tell speech therapists to always work on commenting along with all the communicative intents. So scripting for different emotions, body autonomy, sensory experiences, writing it out. Okay, and we're not going to worry about emotions just yet. Emotions are registered very differently. So we want for sensory experiences, commenting, transitions, refusal, body autonomy. What am I forgetting? Joy. I always love to add in joy. Things that they're going to love, things that they're going to use. So that way they can easily take it and mix and match it. So happy birthday. If we're using happy, if we want to make sure it's culturally salient as well. So if I'm not going to tell a child, because happy birthday, happy Hanukkah, happy Ramadan, happy Easter, all start with happy, but they all mean something very different and they have a very different emotional attachment. So we want to make sure we use that. And I want to show you what this sounds like and what this looks like. So we'll go on to the next one. So many lines.
Why?
All right, my friend, we have to clean up now.
It's okay.
Well, I'm having so much fun.
Why? It's okay.
It's okay. I want to play some more. One more
Play
minute.
some more.
Okay, one more minute. Okay, so in this clip, this child has many single words. He is great at, and he has a great vocabulary in the sense that he can name everything, and his favorite thing is Blippi. So the script for Hear the Lion is from Blippi. So he can name all the animals, but when it comes to then using that word to make another word or to go into phrases or do anything else is stuck. So we want to give them lots of scripts. So when I said, oh, it's time to clean up, I didn't say, hey, are you ready? Let's clean it up. And I didn't say, oh, what, or ask them any questions. What's your lion doing? Where's that? Instead, we want to just make a statement. Hey, we're done. Let's clean up. So the phrase was, let's clean up. And he said, it's okay. It's okay. Now, it's okay if you take it literally, it would mean it's okay. Okay, go ahead and clean it up. But we know that that's not what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say is, I don't want to clean up. I'm having too much fun. And I wasn't sure what he was going to take. So we want to make sure we're modeling in a natural way, and your child will accept it in the sense that they might look at you in the video for HIPAA reasons, and for the child's safety, I blurred out, but the child looks at me right away as an acknowledgement. Okay, yeah, you're getting what I'm saying. And I give him two different scripts because I'm not sure what he's going to want. One more minute, or is it, what did it say in this one? I want to keep playing. And he just takes the full script. He just accepts it right away and he says it right back to us. That is an immediate echolalia. That is him accepting it, holding it, and repeating it right back. Now, our goal is when they accept these scripts, they hold it in and they use it at a different time and it becomes delayed echolalia. When it is delayed and is retrieved at another time, when I'm like, okay, it's time to clean up, and he goes, oh, I need 1 more minute, or any of the other scripts that I said, then we're working through our developmental stages. I'm going to have you listen to it one more time because we're using declarative sentences. We're not asking questions. We're not using the word say. And so many well-meaning clinicians and therapists and parents will say, I'm all done. Say whatever they want them to say. And I was actually going back looking at videos of my own children trying to put this presentation together, and I wanted to cringe because all I'm saying is say whatever, say whatever. And when we give our Gestalt language processors that phrase say, it becomes a taught phrase. So they'll say cup, say book, say what's next, what's this, it's a book, and they'll answer it just like that. So we don't want to do that. And we're not taking what they're saying literally. It's the meaning behind it that's important. And when we establish that connection and trust and figure out what the meaning is, then we can move mountains. Then we know we can move them through their stages. So many lines.
Why?
All right, my friend, we have to clean up now.
It's okay.
Well, I'm having so much
Yeah,
fun.
why? It's okay.
It's okay. I want to play some more. One more
Plays
minute.
a ball.
Okay, 1 more minute. So one thing that you can do when you don't know what their meaning is, always repeat it back to them. Like, it's okay. Like when I asked it, like, and they'll look at you, you'll know that you have a connection because they'll look at you, or they'll do a head nod, or they'll say it one more time. So script, oh, I thought we had a question. All right, let's move on to the next. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask away. I have to say, Gestalt language processing, we're covering through it very quickly. And this is typically a 3-hour presentation that I give to speech language therapists and pathologists in the school district. So we're just doing a very quick assessment, a quick description of it.
There's a question which I feel like I could answer this for you, Farwa, but I'll let you take it. When working with this population, do you extenuate your intonation?
I am very rich in my intonation. Yes, because they're picking up the tunes of our environment. So it's not so much the words itself. So they're not saying, if I'm saying, what a wonderful day, they're not picking up what a wonderful day. It's what a wonderful day. And you saw in the initial video of my friend where I said, what are we going to do? You know, what? And that's okay. Let them pick up those scripts, make it as rich as you can, because our Gestalt language processors are considered intonation babies. They're picking up all the sounds of our environment.
Now we're going to talk a little bit more about movement and the sensory and movement experiences of our kids. And, you know, a lot of our autistic children, the focus is so often just on how they're communicating and interacting with the world. But what I've learned over the past 23 years, and then really over the past 20 years, the research has all supported this, is that there is so many movement and motor control challenges way beyond what anyone ever knew. It's something that I've seen all along, because as treating it, I saw that our kids did better quicker, but the research took a lot more time to actually show these movement differences. And it's autistic adults who I've really learned from, and the research is learning from. This is actually a study that looked at blog posts from autistic adults that talk about how they're having all these movement differences in stopping and starting and controlling their bodies. And so many of those things can be just interpreted as a behavior or not being cooperative and things like that. So that's why I really wanted to just start with that concept. And the picture is my friend Nick walking his dog Leader. And he has taught me so much about how these motor challenges impact his daily life and just every day in and day out, and how by doing the movement experiences we have has made just everyday life that much easier for him and has made it easier for him to communicate in the ways that he does. I love this image because it really demonstrates how we can use movement to change so many different areas of how a child is seeing and experiencing and expressing their world. So the picture on the left is before any intervention, just a very basic stick figure. And then after 2 months of physical therapy, just movement intervention, this is what he drew, and it had perspective and detail, and he was just seeing and experiencing his world in a completely different way. There was no practice of fine motor skills. There was no practice of drawing. There was just building his awareness of the world around him, and his sensory and motor and postural connections. But it's such a beautiful picture of how his whole perception of his world changed and how he was then able to express that in drawing. Just a list, we're not going to go through any of these in details, but just to kind of show how there are so many different areas that are impacted by a lot of our kids who are neurodivergent. And it may look like a kid is active and moving. So what do you mean they have a movement problem? A lot of our kids, they can move really fast, but they have a really hard time controlling where they are staying still or moving through space in a more slow, controlled way. So they're kind of going through in this kind of fall through life, which is not really very effective when you're also trying to make sense of your environment and listen to directions and communicate and do all of these more higher level things. So there's all these that kind of different area of movement differences that we see in our kids. And by addressing all of these kind of foundations of movement, it supports everything else from communication and learning, and all the higher level skills that we want our kids to do in school and in life. So senses, you ask any preschooler or kindergartner, what are the 5 senses? And they'll tell you touch, taste, smell, hearing, and vision. They'll tell you all those things, but there are these internal senses. I say that like we skip them because they're really big words and hard to spell and hard to say, but they are a huge impact on how we take in our world, how we perceive it. So proprioception, which is the information from our joints and our muscles that tells our brain where we are in space. This is the very calming sense. So anytime we do heavy work or carry weighted things, that's enhancing that proprioceptive system. Our crashers, they are looking for all of that input because they need more into that system to help them know where they are in space. The vestibular system, that is located in our inner ear. So behind the eardrum, we have this bone encased in there, and that tells us, you know, our kids who love spinning, they're stimulating that sense, but it also tells us when we're going, when we're stopping, moving up, moving down. Their gravity receptors, they're connected to our eyes. So when I'm turning my head, I can still look at you straight here and you're not moving. And that's how our vestibular system is connected to our eyes. If that system is not doing everything it's supposed to, and a child's moving through space, what are they perceiving? What are they seeing in the world? Everything may be moving and jumping. And the same thing in school. They're then trying to look at letters and reading. Where is it going on the page? Is it jumping all around, or are they seeing it the way that you're seeing it? And then interoception is really, there's a lot more recently awareness of interoception, but I see this all the time in so many of our kids. Interoception is those internal messages in our bodies. So when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're tired, a lot of our kids, they may have the feeling, but not be able to communicate it. And then they just get really angry and really mad when really they're hungry or they're thirsty and they can't tell anyone. They also may not have the awareness of, I feel rumbling in my stomach. That means I'm hungry. Now I have to go from that to communicating it or taking action, all of which may be really, really hard. So that interoception, sometimes that takes the parent or caregiver really investigating. At this certain time of day, I had a student who at like 11 o'clock every day would just lose it. And the school was really concerned about her behavior. She needed a snack. They started giving her a snack at 11 o'clock every day instead of waiting till lunch, and it all stopped. She didn't know how to connect the feeling to communicate it, and it caused a lot of challenges. I see there's a question. I have a student who loves ups and downs. He likes to be lifted up and down. What sensory experience is he seeking? Vestibular? Probably a combination of vestibular and proprioception. So anything that's kind of crashing is that proprioception, or deep pressure, even joint compression. So when we're doing any of that kind of rough and tumble play, we're giving a lot of deep pressure, but all of that moving through space, swinging. So swinging in a slow, calm way is very calming, and swinging in kind of like an unpredictable way or spinning is very revving up. So we can use our sensory systems to kind of help our kids get in this kind of calm, alert state. And yes, so much language. My first job I worked at, our speech therapists were very traditional tabletop kind of therapists. And all of the kids would start talking in OT and PT, or would be on the swings, we'd be moving. And then I'd have to report back to the speech therapist all the things they were saying because they weren't seeing it. So yes, and this is why Farwa is moving with all of her children in her sessions. You will not see her staying still, because our kids are drawn to movement. They're natural movers. And when you incorporate movement into play, language just starts flying out.
Because then the children are not focusing on their body is regulated, they're in their zone of optimal learning, and now you can get language in. So that's why regulation is so important in this.
Yes,
Which
so
is
that's
perfect
where we're
segue
going.
for Dr. Joni. Dr. Joni, why is it so important? Why is a speech therapist talking about regulation?
Well, just
why are we here?
Yeah, think about when you wake up in the morning. Do you want your cup of coffee first, or is your arousal low? So we look at arousal, we're looking at our calm alert state. So when I wake up in the morning, my arousal is really low until I have my cup of coffee, and then I'm a lot more alert. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to do my thing. But sometimes in the morning, instead of going right to my coffee, sometimes I exercise and I'm running on my treadmill, and now I'm really alert and ready to go. Sometimes our kids are too revved up and they need calming things. So that proprioceptive work, that deep pressure, is very calming, or that kind of repetitive, slow swinging is very calming. We need to kind of always be looking at our kids and see where is their state, and then where do we meet them to bring them to that calm alert state before expecting them to learn anything, because you're not learning much when you're not regulated. So we have to always look at that regulation first and then kind of go from there.
So Caitlin had asked, is there a list of recommended reading activity ideas for the last 3 senses? And I just put in, we love the Autistic Child book. It's an easy read, and it's an easy read for parents that discusses the sensory systems and strategies.
And then there's a part 2, the Autistic Child has fun, that has a lot of like putting it into action. So those are both, and the libraries usually carry both of them. So they're really great tools. And then we're going to talk about the core a little bit and our breathing. Now, a lot of our kids will hold their breath for stability. So if you see a kid kind of, all of a sudden they get out of breath and you're like, why? This is a child. You have so much energy. Why are you out of breath? Or why does your voice sound like this? A lot of our kids will hold their breath for stability, and then they'll keep moving, and then they'll hold their breath again. You can see it's a really effective short-term strategy, but it's not a good long-term strategy, because you're going to have to take your next breath. So it's a strategy. Our kids are so smart. They compensate in so many different ways. And we have books at the end and the resources, and you'll be getting that in your email box. So we want to make sure our kids are using much more effective techniques than holding their breath. Wherever their posture is really impacts where their breathing is. So if you sit really, really tall, like in your best posture ever, and you try to take a deep breath, so go ahead and try that. All your air is coming into your chest. That's often our kids who are in that fight or flight, feeling anxiety, their chest breathing. And then our kids who are more kind of slumped down. So if you kind of slump down and take a deep breath there, you feel it more in your belly. And those kids are getting more diaphragmatic breathing, but we want that just right in the middle. Because when our diaphragm is expanding, then we are bringing our calming system instead of our fight or flight kind of anxiety. I need to run or freeze or do something. When we're getting those deep breaths from the diaphragm, we are calming our whole system and we're letting ourselves use that stability, those actual internal core muscles from the inside out. So the breath is really connected to not only how we talk, our stability, how we're exploring our world, so that we can slow ourselves down and not just kind of be falling through space.
And then they have easy access to their voicing, because when you have the voice coming up and our articulators are moving, we have words coming out.
If you're holding your breath, it doesn't make for good talking. Does not work both at the same time. So when we get breathing going, it makes both feeding and talking so much better. And then the other kind of last piece of the puzzle for a lot of our kids is getting the body moving on autopilot so that they're not thinking about it. We don't want our kids to have to think about moving while they are communicating and playing and learning. We want all of that to just do what it's supposed to do. And so that our kids can just work on those higher level skills. So that's our sensory organization. And what that means is being able to not just rely on your eyes, but taking all that input from your body. So your eyes can be looking wherever you want to go. Motor planning, to be able to start and stop when you want. A lot of our kids will tell me that their brain is telling them they start, but their body won't listen. And we may assume, remember, we're going to check our assumptions. We may assume they're not listening, but really it's their bodies not listening to what their brain is telling them. And then multitasking, even eye contact, we don't think of that as a multitasking thing. We need to be able to use multiple senses at the same time and then also listen and also respond. It is so complex, and a lot of our kids really struggle with the complexity of doing all these different sensory intake and motor and everything at the same time.
That being said, a lot of our autistic children have trouble with dyspraxia and motor planning, which shows up in apraxia of speech. And a lot of our gestalt language processors have a hard time initiating that voicing, initiating the gestalt that they're trying to pull from.
And most children who have apraxia of speech have some degree of motor planning challenges in their body. And it is much easier for the kids because, again, movement is fun and this natural motivator, and it feels good. When you work on the motor planning from the full body point of view, it makes it then much easier to then have it come out the mouth. It's just, one leads to the other.
And goals for speech therapy are accomplished so much faster when the body is ready. Now, common questions that parents ask. My child can climb and jump. Why do they need physical therapy, Dr. Joni?
We hear this all the time. And afterwards, parents will be like, oh, I never realized that had to do with that. But what you're talking about, a lot of it's the quality of movement. And it's the quality of movement is so important because of what we talked about with breath control, which gets you out of fight or flight. Breath control gets you out of an anxious state, and all of those sensory and motor skills that help you be in that just right place and to be able to then motor plan all the things you're trying to do in life beyond all of the kind of more obvious gross motor skills. So it's the quality of all of that that makes such a big impact, again, on getting the body in autopilot so the kids can do all the things that they are really meant to do and we want to see them do.
And I have to say, kids are master at disguising how they use their movement. Another question that we get asked a lot is, when I make an occupational therapy referral, my child can write and hold with a spoon. Why do I need occupational therapy? Like, they can do all the fine motor controls.
Yeah, and our OTs are experts in that sensory system and regulation. And often this finding the calm alert state and finding what is going to work for each child, there's a lot of trial and error that has to happen, and it often changes over time. And so having the support of an expert to guide parents through that process is so much more effective. And remember that calm alert state has to come first before learning. And that's what our OTs are just brilliant at doing. Some home strategies that are really effective for our kids. First, you have to observe what are their sensory preferences. So most kids will have a combination of things they avoid, things they seek. And so we really need to watch and learn, and then to be able to build from that. Blowing games are super effective because, again, whenever we're doing things like blowing bubbles, blowing a noisemaker, taking a straw in a big bowl of water and see, can we blow bubbles? We're expanding that breathing, which is building the skills for kids to have more postural control without holding their breath, and to be able to help them kick in that parasympathetic system, which is the opposite of the fight or flight. It's that calming system. So any kind of blowing, breathing games, swimming, going underwater really helps support all of that. Supporting the sitting posture. Sometimes just popping a little wedge under a child's bottom makes all the difference for them to be able to just be upright and ready to go without working so hard. So a lot of our kids are working really hard to try to stay still. And so that's a really kind of easy thing. I really like the yoga wedges because they're really inexpensive. And they're just these foam wedges. I often cut them in half, and then I have two. I've had families that will keep it on two different chairs, and it's just such an easy way to do it. You're the child's co-regulating partner. So your voice is a way you can do that. If the child's up really loud, if you want to help them regulate, you don't want to go louder. You want to do the opposite. You might even whisper. So if they're up here, let's go play. You might be whispering to them. Or if the child is really kind of low arousal, sedentary, just kind of being a mushball, that's when you're going to go full animation. So you almost want to look at, you're co-regulating together. So how do you balance out what they need? And your voice is a really fantastic tool to do that. Deep pressure, heavy work, we talked about that proprioceptive system. It is always calming. So when in doubt, you could always bring out a deep pressure, heavy work kind of activity. Pushing the laundry basket around the house, carrying the milk. Can you help me bring in the groceries? Animal walks are basically all heavy work kind of activities. Handstands against the wall. Who can stay up there the longest? There are so many different ways, but that's kind of a go-to. When in doubt, that deep pressure is always going to be helpful. And we find that when our kids are getting multiple disciplines, when we're addressing their bodies and their communication together, and our PTs and OTs are all now taking these concepts and also communicating in the ways that support our children where their communication is at. So we're communicating with them within these gestalts, and we're changing how we're communicating because now we're learning better about how our children are processing it. So we really work together to be able to support the child where they are and support them head to toe.
That being said, if you are providing scripts, it will help both analytic and gestalt language processors because we're giving them longer chunks. You will not, if you aren't sure what your child's language style is or learning style is, it's better to give them phrases and they can unbundle it themselves than to give them single words. What I'm finding is when I just start with the Gestalt language processing approach, all the children benefit. Now let's hear from our parents, because what's more important, like Dr. Joni and I are parents ourselves, but we also want Vince and Sarah to get on and talk to us about taking a holistic approach and how that's helped their child.
Farwa. Hi,
Hi,
Dr. Joni.
Hi.
It's late. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks to everyone who's also still on, so I can gush about how well my child's doing in physical therapy and with you, Farwa, in speech. I have a stage 4 Gestalt language learner who is suspected neurodivergent, and we have been through it as parents. We started with early intervention back in 2020. We noticed these very large developmental delays. Of course, we could get no help. There were wait lists everywhere. There even are wait lists now. If you're a parent, it's so hard to get services for your child. And we went through it all. We've experienced so many different types of speech language first. We didn't learn about Gestalt language until he was already in stage 2 or stage 3 last summer. And when we found out about Gestalt, I became obsessed with how it works. How can I get into my child's world? How can I engage with him? He can sing all of Hamilton the musical, but I can't have a conversation with him. How do we like get these bridges connected, right? And having experienced both child-led and both adult-led, I don't know how else you would say it, Farwa, but having experienced both, child-led, play-led therapy has been absolutely life-changing for him. Getting him to move his body has been really life-changing for him. And we've been doing Gestalt with Farwa, therapy with Farwa since September, and we just started adding on these other layers of physical therapy, and we will be adding on occupational therapy, just all the therapies that we could get. We want to lay it on him because he has progressed so quickly. And we only started with physical therapy at Kid PT in January, at the end of January. So he's in week 6 now, or week 7. And right around week 2, he just started like exploding. His language started exploding. His physicality started exploding. And he just gets stronger and stronger physically, just in all the ways every week. And it's just been such a delight to see him excel. And he just loves going to the location where all of these services are provided. Like, it's his favorite thing every single week. And we get to work with all these experts. So it's so important as a parent, like, just to see your kid excel on their own. It's just been like a weight off my shoulders. Do you have any questions you wanted me to like specifically talk about, Farwa?
So yeah, actually, I do. One thing that was new for you is when I recommended physical therapy, you said, well, he can do most anything. Nobody's ever talked to me about physical therapy. Talk to me about what was going through your mind when I had made that recommendation. I have to say,
Yeah.
Sarah has such a wonderful, wonderful child. And when he had come to me, yes, he had stage 3 single words, but most of them were these longer gestalts. He did not have a good enough foundation for him to move through his stages. And I want to say in about 20 sessions now, he is now on stage 4 and answering WH questions, making his own sentences. And now the world is open. You can go on to any kind of learning academically without it hindering your learning.
Yeah, he's doing really great in preschool. Really, really great. We were denied services for physical therapy. From early intervention, we are denied physical therapy services from his school, his public school, because it doesn't interfere with his education because he gets by, because he can walk and jump. And it was tough because he is a very petite person, and he's not super muscular and all these things. So when Farwa recommended PT, it was kind of like the first thought in my mind as a parent was, okay, another therapy to pay for. My insurance won't cover nothing. Like, it just won't cover anything. So that was the first thought. Farwa was like, oh no, she's trying to sell me on PT. You know, honestly, that was my first thought. And then I have heard from other therapists that we had that if you work on all of it together, all of it rises together too. You really can't just focus on one single aspect of their development. We've discovered it's really important to get all of it in there, all the sensory stuff, all the physical stuff. So that was my first thought part. It was like, oh no, more therapy, more time, more money. But I'm so glad that we did it. I would do it again a million times because it's just been propelling us forward as a family. It's propelling him forward as an individual. He could put his pants on now. Like, wow, that's a coup for us. He can, sit on the toilet. He can do all these things he couldn't do even just weeks ago.
And the confidence more than anything, the happiness and confidence that comes with your child that is able to do things independently is so phenomenal, right? And it builds a connection with you, your family, with himself. It's such a wonderful thing. And I have to say, I will not recommend services unless I truly feel that a child will need it. And what's important is knowing what your child needs at a given moment of time. We don't want to overload you as a parent with having to drive around to PT, OT, speech all at once. You can prioritize things. Okay, maybe the next 3 months I want to focus on speech. Then I can add on PT. Oh, Dr. Joni, would you recommend PT right now? Maybe we need to do occupational therapy. So that's what's important.
Yeah, and that's why we do the screenings, because we want to see, is this really an important priority right now for your child? Or do we need to kind of put those resources elsewhere first? So we really want to make sure it's going to be effective and not just add more to anyone's plate.
So Sarah, I have a question. What convinced you to try PT? Because we don't hear a lot about physical therapy. When you go to the developmental pediatrician, go to your regular pediatrician, it's usually speech therapy and occupational therapies that's recommended.
Mm-hmm. Even for early intervention, PT was the last thing he got. It was speech first, OT, because he was a bit sensory seeking at the time. So PT was always the last thing. So in my mind, I was like, oh, well, PT can wait. PT can wait until he's older, and but he couldn't even run. He couldn't jump. He couldn't do a lot of these basic things that was preventing him from keeping up with his peers. And I think that also impacted his confidence a bit. He was falling off the playground. He was always hurt. He's one of those kids that was holding his breath when he was doing something simple, like stabbing his hamburger with a fork. He's like, oh, this is just strenuous. What finally convinced me to do PT, because when we came to Dr. Joni, we did the full screening. Let's take a look at everything and see what's just happening with him as a unique individual. And I mean, honestly, I was just ready to start something. And I think you guys recommended PT first. We aren't doing all of it right now, guys. We're just doing PT and speech. We'll focus on OT after it. The nice thing about Farwa and Dr. Joni working together is you have this like expert team holistically looking at your child, looking at everything with the child. They're communicating with each other. And I think it was you guys had met and we're like, yeah, we all 4 of us who saw your kid recommended that we try PT first, right? OT's not off the table, but let's focus here, because if you focus on these physical aspects of your child, then you'll see speech explode. And then, there's just like kind of an order of things that you guys recommended. And I trust the experts, definitely trust the experts.
And if you think about, how a baby develops, that gross motor is coming first, and then the talking comes and the fine motor skills. So that's where we're just kind of going back and filling in some missing pieces. and then letting them go run and use it.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions for Sarah? We are so grateful, Sarah, that you are on this late, and everyone's on this late. I know we said this was going to be a 45-minute presentation, but I see we have a few other questions coming in. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing that. So we have two questions. A question on WH questions and for IEPs. We do not want to make any goals for WH questions. That means asking a child who, what, where, when, why, until they're in stage 4. Now we have a question on food groups. Are there specific food groups to avoid? That is a question for your pediatrician, and I would say have allergy testing done. Research shows that food is not going to, or cutting out of food is not going to enhance language. It could be something that's more medical related. So I would say consult with your pediatrician or your doctor. Dr. Jonah, do you have anything to say with that?
I agree. Same thing. It's very individual. There's subset of kids who are going to be very sensitive to certain things, whether it's food dyes or certain foods. But I would investigate that with someone who specializes in that area.
So we have another question from Rafaelina. So for a child who is a Gestalt language processor and also has apraxia, how do you recommend structuring treatment? I work mostly with apraxia, and the way I structure treatment is working on motor planning and small set of functional word learning. But this goes against Gestalt language processing and the language input. How do we marry both approaches? When I have a child that has dyspraxia or apraxia speech, I tend to give them more Gestalt and work on motor planning of the body first. What I am finding more and more as motor imitation comes in, their imitation of phrases and their single immediate echolalia comes in, they start unbundling their language. So if you are going to choose an approach, stick with it, and then we can always adjust it. So if you're doing just the motor planning component, then we're working on the motor planning piece, which is a speech sound disorder. For Gestalt language processors, it's better to give them the chunks, let them unbundle it. Around stage 2 is when I see a lot more speech clarity. So my little friend who was speaking really fast in jargony speech also had underlying dyspraxia, and when we worked on that language, it started to clear up. So what I found from my experience is working on that Gestalt piece first, and then get it going into the speech sound production, working on the clarity and intelligibility and the speech sound disorder after. So language comes first for me.
And yes, we will be sending the recording to anyone who registered, so you'll have that.
Where do I go from here? So align yourself with like-minded professionals and parents. We are the change. What we are trying to build is a community of families and professionals that are taking a strength-based approach. Your child is wonderful. They are amazing. They can do so many things if we give them the credit. We never want to come in saying, my child can't do this, my child can't do this, my child can't do this. My favorite word is yet. Your child can't do it yet, but they'll get there. Let's focus on all the cool things that they can do. There are courses out there for families and clinicians to learn about it, learn about Gestalt language processing. Meaningful speech is one of them. I do have a discount code. If you type in FARWA, you get a 5% discount code. Northern Speech Services is run by Marge Blanc. It's a 3-part course on Gestalt language processing, and it's more like a college level course. And then if you are a Spanish speaker, Amanda Blackwell has a wonderful course on natural communication. There are podcasts available. Communication Development Center, which is run by Marge Blanc, has all of our information available for free. And the NJ ACE, as well as Meaningful Speech, has podcasts available and are on Instagram. You can also follow me and Dr. Joni on Instagram. if you would like some book reading, I would highly recommend Dr. Joni's book, Building Blocks, Turn Stumbling Blocks into Building Blocks. It is an easy read, families, and I pull it up, like I have marks all over my books. It's such a wonderful read.
And it's on Amazon, so it's easy to grab.
Hello from the Philippines. That is, there's literature on it. It is evidence-based Gestalt language processing, just like analytic language processing. Questions? As a thank you, we'd like to extend a free 20-minute consultation with myself and Dr. Joni at Kid PT. So if you have any questions about Gestalt language processing, if you have any questions about how it works, then IEP writing goals or anything of that sort, feel free to reach out to me. Dr. Joni also provides free discovery visits for PT and OT.
Yep,
Along with that, go ahead.
go ahead. Just to share with you what our services are. So we have individual services, PT, OT, and speech. We also are offering a summer program this summer that is basically the change we wanted to see in the world. We are bringing together families and bringing together our kids for a summer program where they are going to be getting OT, PT, speech, and enrichment programs along with the Family Fun Day, where we can bring them together as a community. And we are focusing on fun, play skills, interaction, however each individual child wants to bring themselves to the table. And we are so excited to be able to offer that this summer. So we are going to be doing that summer program starting this year. And then both Farwa and myself offer clinician and parent coaching and mentoring to both parents and therapists. Mostly virtually, we offer that as well.
Do we have any other questions? I want to thank everybody for being on, especially so late in the evening. We are so grateful for your support, and we are here to help serve you any way that we can. Please reach out to us.
Yep, reach out to us with any follow-up questions, or if you want to know more, we're happy to kind of connect you to different resources.
Yeah, Raphaelina, one other, Marge Blanc has a wonderful article on dyspraxia. So I will send that to you. It's on our Communication Development Center website, the CDC website. It's, I have it, and it's a wonderful read, and it tells you how to move your child through if they have apraxia and initiating voicing. Thank you all so much. It was so wonderful for you and for me. This is so great. Have a wonderful day.